So, last time we took some limited time on Mykonos. Limited because much extended time there will eat into your wallet. So, come for the international airport, but then, get to a different Cycladic island to escape the inflation. So we had several days on the largest of the Cycladic islands. As usual, you will see this bias heavily and unapologetically towards the ancient sites on the island, but having first glimpsed Naxos on our way past to Paros the previous year, we finally had a decent time window to check it out. For reasons, this didn't turn into the episode I thought I'd be making. Anyway, more on that in a bit. So, a wait at Mykonos port until a small but fast ferry with food and drinks prices that would make a Swiss airport blush hurried us over the water to Naxos port. We covered this a bit last time, but if I may, as an adult male, I'm pretty game-faced, like, come on, let's go, when it comes to public transport. But for this trip, I was with both my wife and a baby, only a few months old, and my folks, one of whom needs a little help from walking poles, for example. And so the manner in which the staff are almost bodily throwing bags and people off the ship, I understand. The turnarounds could be near infinitely long if everyone was just allowed to, dither around. You know those people on planes who just stand in the aisle, leisurely taking their jacket off while blocking access for another 100 people behind them? But particularly with these ships and their narrow access on and off, it is tantamount to bullying the manner in which you are herded. Anyway, this was before our terrible experience on the way back, so this experience on the smaller Sea-Jets vessel, while kind of unpleasant, was nowhere near as bad as how we were treated getting on and off the larger boat. Anyway, after disembarking, all busy in the hot sun, sorting the hire car, I wasn't filming this, blah blah blah, eventually out of the urban centre onto the quiet roads. And to be honest, not filming a lot to include on this first day. Again, watch the Mykonos episode. I was coming off a 31-hour odyssey to reunite with my family with barely any sleep, taking time at the apartment, letting the family relax, a little pool time. If you've ever criticised the channel for trying to do too much, too fast, well, here's us taking some relaxation time in between the shooting schedule, okay? Happy now? Did just walk down the road to the bakery for a Fredo. Someone needs to have a word with otherwise great local spots using Lavazza. It's kind of like serving microwave ginster sausage rolls at an ambassadorial reception. But, no matter. Once again, confirmed beyond any reasonable doubt that no matter how much fruit you pulp into your free Reiki, nothing will take the edge off. But fine and well. So yes, relaxation mode. For context, price and facilities had encouraged us to this southwestern angle of Naxos, a coastline filled with apartments. This one was non-pricey and had a pool and generally fit the 4.5 of us quite well. So we dipped just 5 minutes down the road to Mikri Vigla and a restaurant just on the beach. Was loving it at the time, but the more the evening went on, I started realizing, hang on, this is like the most ludicrously perfect evening. It's warm, sitting on the edge of a beach, few others in the restaurant watching the sun go down over Paros. The pork was delicious. To pull this off in the UK would represent near obscene opulence, especially with the relative quietness of the area. You'd be dropping at least a couple of grand for a place in, let's face it, probably Cornwall, to even attempt to recreate an experience like this. And yet here, this is pretty much just business as usual. You could have experiences like this all along this coast. And again, just a few days into September, the large swell of August crowds will have departed. There's still a little bit of footfall on the islands, but just glowing all the way home. Naxos delivered a perfect evening. So this was the beach next morning. As you can see, I hadn't exactly raced out to film, but did head out this morning to catch a few bits. I'm not going to deep dive into most of these. The things on the list, they're not vast archaeological parks. So for example, this small ruined basilica founded in the 500s AD. Things you can park up nearby, check out for a while, and then carry on. So a little further inwards, the Venetian Tower of Della Rocas, or further still, this ruined sanctuary from the 500s BC, and just beyond it, some things that Naxos is particularly famous for. You can see modern quarries clearly in the landscape. Naxian marble is prized for its quality and was transported far and wide for many buildings and monuments in antiquity. But a particular curiosity, these kouros, or male statues, lie ostensibly abandoned in the Naxian countryside, not far from where they may have been quarried. It appears that many pieces were largely shaped in the vicinity of the quarry, and in the event of something being damaged or a flaw being discovered, they may have just been abandoned there. Hence these two. Annoyingly, I was running short on card space, so we broke off from this mini trip more into the interior and back to the apartment. So then, scooping up the whole family, we headed for a proper look at Naxos town. Parking is a bit of a challenge around there. To the northeast of the centre, they have these free car parks that are basically just dry dirt. But a short walk up from those, I mean, what better way to get an introduction to the town than this coffee spot? Oh man. This is Avaton. It's part of the old fortress on Naxos, in particular the Venetian Tower, and while justifiably not the cheapest drink on the island, you have to stop off here at least once, not least because this has got to be one of the best views in town. We were at the top of this castle fortress complex, which is going to need a deep dive at another time, because while it's often described as a Venetian fortress, it's undergone many different layers before and after the era of Venetian control. It's a big mix. We've pointed out examples of this on almost every Cycladic island we've been to so far. This is also the building that houses the museum, but we'll head back there later. So we had a lunch at the waterfront, and then to get the family out of the hot sun, again, a quiet afternoon spent in the cool, a low-key dinner with mainly just some fruit and Greek yogurt just down by the beach in front of the apartment. So once again, watching the sunset over Paros. What had been the previous year, we'd explored that for a couple of days, and you can see that episode in the playlist along with all our other Greece travels. That includes Santorini and all the Cyclades episodes, but also the episodes on Athens and Crete and Thessaloniki and Corfu and all sorts. Well, cut to the next day. The next day was primarily taken up with getting further into the Naxian interior. We started off catching a couple of sites where the Roman aqueduct is visible. From there, heading further into the mountains. Naxos is a mix. We've definitely had more challenging Greek roads before. The presence of both good asphalt and a painted centerline for most of the time definitely makes this feel more manageable, though the driving does become much more challenging as soon as you have to funnel through the small towns and the parked cars turn the already narrow road into a single lane that you have to negotiate with any and all oncoming traffic. Took some time to wander the tracks around Chalkio and catch some of the various old Byzantine churches there. Then further down the road, by now we are in the heart of the Naxos mountains, but you could still see all the way to the coast and just the edges of Naxos town. Incredible views. Having made it over the central mountains, you are greeted with the view all the way down to the eastern coast, and a sign indicated that yes, we were on the right track. It's still about a half hour just to negotiate the twists and hairpins of the road down, but again, apart from the alarming turns, this is a remarkably well-maintained road, all things considered. The gorgeous electric blue seas on the eastern coast were being whipped into a frenzy by the winds. There's just a few buildings and the odd taverna at the town of Motsuna, but as you carried on along the road, the buildings thinned down until it's just one natural beach after another. This is all desperately pretty. The asphalt stopped just 1 kilometre short of our target, which, come on guys, you paved this entire eastern coast, which is virtually devoid of people or buildings, and then you down tools just before the last mile? I mean, it's not as if this section is even unusually rough either. Anyway, after the long drive and a short scramble over rocks, we were here, the Cycladic Acropolis of Panormus. Yeah, you knew it would take something obscure and ancient to get us out this far. This is an incredibly special place. You can see the fortified enclosure dating to around 2500 BC with around 20 rooms of different sizes. But this is one of the few sites where the ancient Cycladic culture is clearly visible. This actually needs a quick sidebar. Everyone wants to know about the Minoans. They're beautiful and enigmatic, and there's a fair quantity on Crete that you can explore. And they were superseded by the Mycenaeans, and we've been chasing Tholos tombs all the way from Cyprus to Sicily. But preceding both of those, a unique culture emerged in the Cycladic islands, and its most enduring and recognizable legacy? These figurines. Surprisingly modern and minimalist looking, they've been found in comparatively large numbers, but in some ways we're lucky to still have the ones that we do. Victorians could not wait to have these in their homes, so an untold number were looted and trafficked. Anyway, I haven't made as much progress on Cycladic sites as I'd like. The trip I'd planned to Syros this time wasn't possible, and Milos remains a distance away, but seeing Panormos was a rush, and frankly, can't wait to get out there and explore more of the Cyclades. Panormos, town, village, it's actually a tiny, little handful of buildings, a little coffee, beer and restaurant spot, plus this Shrek-looking toilet if you really needed one. Had an espresso, sat at the table with what I can only assume are amphore finds from local dives. Now, much as the beach was very inviting, we needed to start making progress back. So, retrace the distance over the mountains. The difference with the west coast, in which virtually no 500 square yards is left for that holiday apartments, it's pretty stark. Anyway, back to ours. I've talked about this before. Mythos is a pretty low-tier beer. It's not great stuff, so I don't like doing their marketing shots for them, but damn if Greece isn't so gorgeous that even the cheap lagers hit like the best pint you've ever tasted. So, time by the pool, then brought the fam into central Naxos again for dinner, some pretty good souvlaki, a low-angle flag shot, and at length a chance to head to the icon of Naxos. This puzzling portal is the doorframe of an ambitious but never completed temple begun in the 500s BC. You can see from afar it draws quite a crowd, particularly in the evenings, and come sunset, well, we'd all basically had the same idea. Amusingly, you can catch the sunset through the door, but in early September, this is at rather an oblique angle, meaning the area you actually have to stand in order to catch this very specific photographic composition is only a couple of meters wide. And then this becomes a contest of who can hold their smartphone aloft the highest, leading to some rather amusing activity in the lower thirds of the shots I was attempting. You might think I'm about to say something terribly scathing about all these sheeple, but really, quite the opposite. This year was the first time I'd ever caught the sunrise at Stonehenge, and the similarities, along with the raised hands, is not hard to see. I'm sure everyone would have preferred there to be 80% fewer people, but I am all for this. A group of people gathered for sunset with a small photographic objective, brilliant. There are few activities that groups of humans can undertake in public that are more wholesome than this. I am all about this. So that was satisfying. Following morning, I actually popped back into Naxos town to see a few more bits and get coffee. We had only caught Naxos town gradually over subsequent visits, mostly trying to sort of stay out of the heat of the midday sun. While there's a wide open area by the water lined with restaurants at the edge of the road, you can dive into a labyrinth of streets around the castle. This is as good a place as any to put a supercut. Also had the opportunity to interrogate the Naxos Museum, which, despite currently undergoing restoration, has a brilliant selection of Bronze Age bits, including Cycladic figurines and Mycenaean potteries. Love to see an octopus pot. Okay, I am not in the habit of disclosing medical information about my family, so the next part of the story takes a bit of a dip from the intended trajectory, as we had to attend to, well, thankfully with hindsight, it turned out to be a fairly minor emergency, but it was pretty serious at the time. Amusingly and very fortunately, this all happened in front of 2 French nurses. So within 3 seconds, they were already making checks and doing all sorts of things. So that was incredibly fortunate. So grateful for those guys. And I will say that the guys at Naxos Medical were very good. It's one of the reliefs of being on a larger island. Most islands will have a medical centre of some sort and size, but on a larger island, there's more going on, and we managed to get an appointment the same day. And they were open till 9 p.m. So if you want to get sick, go to Naxos. That did slam the brakes onto the other things I'd planned to check out. It mainly stopped us from getting to the sort of northern tip of Naxos, which again, is, it's about an hour's drive away, so it's quite an undertaking to get there. But first and foremost, got to make sure the family is fine. Accordingly, the following day was a lot more low-key. We took a couple of short trips out, nothing too much. I did take the walk between Mykonos and our accommodation, which was pretty much just one gorgeous azure landscape after the next. Cue supercut. It's puzzling to me how this 5-minute stretch between Mykonos and the rest of the road network is unpaved. The road down the spine of the east coast barely has enough people to field a debate team, and they still paved that. I almost feel like this is there precisely so all the numerous quad bike hirers can feel like they didn't waste their money. But anyway, walking anywhere takes longer than you'd expect, but I wanted to catch a couple of things that we kept driving past not too far from our apartment. There's this boulder that appears to have just been cleaved clean in half. Not sure the geological process, or maybe it wasn't a natural process, I don't know. I just thought it was cool. And then on the same stretch, someone, at some point in the not too distant past, made a point of building this tiny structure in the space below a couple of fallen boulders. I'm not usually much of an urban explorer, but this one has all the hallmarks. Improvised door that looks like something right out of a Fallout game, some shoes left behind on a shelf, an improvised bed. I had to keep looking over my shoulder just to check there wasn't some owner coming back to jump scare me from behind. While we're about it, you'll notice that in all parts of Greece and most of the Balkans, the number of unfinished structures that never quite got the escape velocity to be elegant white tourist apartments, whether it was the 2008 financial crash or just more lately some developers changing their minds, these appear to stay pretty much eternally in the landscape, like video game assets just dropped absent-mindedly onto the island. I feel like I both do and don't have a feel for Naxos at the same time. On the one hand, we were able to devote much more focused time to a good spread of places. I'm sure a lot of people just stick around the coast, so I was definitely glad to have made it into the mountains. It's a large and rugged space. The asphalt roads can only take you so far. There's also a host of ruined windmills, rocky seascapes, and mountain communities that I'm yet to see. But even with our itinerary being reduced by unexpected illness, I do feel like this area represents a pretty good start with regards to seeing Naxos. Anyway, before we wrap up entirely, we took dinner at a beach, just about 6 minutes drive from where we were. Had the most idyllic evening here. What is it the Greeks do with their meat? How come the pork is so good? So saw the sun go down. This area is one of the options we nearly picked to stay. The whole area loosely falls under the heading of Plaka, including where we actually stayed. Well, not much from the final day. I felt I was going to miss walking down this road every day to the bakery. But, time to decant out the accommodation, hire a car back, and then juggle how to stay out of the heat for a couple of hours before the ferry. And then it was time for the ferry off Naxos, which I, talked about last time. I'm still pretty angry about this. Before the medical incident, I actually had tickets to quickly nip over to Tinos, and I was pretty sure the rest of my family would be fine just catching one simple ferry. But to be honest, no. I'm pretty sure with hindsight, if I'd not been there to guide my folks on and defend my wife while the staff started bullying her when she was holding a baby, they probably would have just pulled up the ramp and left my family there on the boiling tarmac. It is beyond ridiculous that of all the activities we undertook in the week, the most threatening and stressful turned out to be catching a ferry? Ugh. By contrast, I realise this sounds like a strange thing to bring up, but no lie, the restaurant and waiting staff on Naxos, they are so attentive yet chill and easygoing. Like, it's a real skill. Cacophony is excruciating. It's like, ugh. Do I have to match your freak when it comes to being over fake polite? But on Naxos, the waiting staff were just really helpful and lovely while also being subtle and the very definition of not pushy. It's a small part of the week, sure, but it really stood out. Literally everywhere, they just really helped put you at ease. Another weird one, the snails. As you get more out into the countryside, you see roadsides covered in tiny snails, all about a centimetre across. And my theory is that maybe they're drawn up by the condensation early in the morning, and then the hot sun comes out and bakes them in place. Maybe, I don't know, but they're in their thousands, all just dried out. Yeah, there are missing pieces that I still want to see on Naxos, and it's like, oh no. Does this mean I have to come back here to this gorgeous sun-soaked island filled with really nice, hospitable people and astonishingly reasonable prices? Oh, damn it! Well, okay, fine. I guess if you really put a gun to my head, I will go back sometime, but only if you force me. So, that's all we've got for the Cyclades so far, though on the flight back, got a chance to play GeoGuessr, but, IRL. And hey, I managed to correctly identify Kia from above. I mean, can you correctly identify Cycladic islands just by flying above them? Anyway, no shock, we'll be back first opportunity we get. And the Greek playlist we mentioned, there's a lot more in there. To the south of the Cyclades, there's all the unbelievable loveliness of Crete, for which we have 4 episodes spanning end to end, but then all the way up to Macedonia in the north with the Thessaloniki episode, so have a flick through there next, or conversely, we mentioned the Venetian castle of Naxos. You can see all the incredible places and fortresses the Venetians left behind. It's a huge journey journey, and we're still not done, but catch it here. Otherwise, the music you've been hearing in the background is ours. We create all the music for these episodes, and you can find it on bandcamp.com. If you want to support the channel, that's the place to do it. You can find the link just in the description. Otherwise, if you could follow us on the socials and just generally do the YouTube things that help us out, like subscribing and leaving a comment, that would be a massive help. We're going to be back with a completely different episode next time, but we'll catch you very soon.